What's up, guys? Kyle McGee here alongside the legendary Drew Blazer. Once again, we are wrestling the past. It is our second ever episode, and when you guys will be hearing this, it'll be Tuesday, quite literally. 2/22/22, and it's a Tuesday. So quite a way to have
On a
episode 2.
Tuesday.
Yeah, quite a way for episode 2 to take place. Believe it or not, that was not planned. It's just how it happened to work out. But yeah, happy second episode. Happy Tuesday to you all when you're listening to this. Drew, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I can't complain, man. We are going to be covering the first
There we
ever
go.
episode of Nitro. I've been looking forward to that. But before we get going, I understand you have something you want to say.
Oh man. Yeah, so this episode, just from the first few minutes, compared to Raw, the first episode of Raw that we talked about, just the visual presentation of the whole show, like it was so bright. They're at the Great Mall of America
Yep.
in Minnesota. And yeah, so it was good stuff.
Yeah, that's one thing we didn't comment on when we were watching Raw is how dark and drab everything was.
Yeah, it's huge difference between the two, just on the visual stuff, and the matches were a lot better too.
Yes, which we will
we'll
get.
talk about.
Which we will talk about that, of course. But yeah, I can't believe we didn't talk about that. Very dark presentation, especially
Oh,
compared to nowadays, even for WWE.
yeah,
But yeah, so here's something though. So I feel like this is something that needs to be addressed. I would not be surprised if people point this out, and maybe we've missed it by now. By the time this airs, Drew, our first ever episode aired on February 15th. I understand the
yeah.
historical significance of Monday Night Raw, but why the fuck didn't we cover Eddie Guerrero's title win on the 18-year anniversary?
Oh no,
Yeah,
was it 18 years
18
or
years.
19?
18.
Oh,
Crazy. I was watching NXT this morning, the Vengeance Day, and I noticed that Santos Escobar had like the Legado del Fantasma logo, looked like the LWO
oh,
logo, and he had the Eddie tights, and they said 18 years to the day, and I was like, fuck, NXT's on a Tuesday. We missed out. So, well,
good grief.
yeah, so we missed
Yeah.
out on that. That
Well,
would have been a good first episode. But for history's sake, I understand why we did what we did, but I just figured I could point that out for everybody so we could realize how dumb we were and how much more fun of a time we could have had. But
that's okay. But
But,
yeah,
I know they say, you can't change the past, but at the same time, we are wrestling the past, so it felt fitting to bring it up here.
Dun, dun, dun.
All right, well, let's get into the thick of things, Drew. So WCW Monday Nitro debuted September 4th, 1995. It was, as we mentioned, from the Mall of America in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with a reported attendance of 2,000. But of course, there's the
Oh,
crowd roaming the mall, so it could have been higher than that.
yeah.
That could have been included in the attendance, so it could have actually been less than that. But the reported attendance is 2,000, and get ready for this, because people who listened to our Raw review last week heard this. It does a 2.5 in the ratings.
Really?
So how funny is
Oh
that when you
wow, the
hear
same.
that both those shows got the exact same rating?
USA Network and TNT,
And TNT,
right?
yeah.
Wow.
Funny to think. Yeah, the
Oh
exact
man.
same rating at 2.5. Now, obviously, this is about 2.5, little over 2.5 years later, so the landscape of TV and everything has changed.
True.
But
And one big thing is Bobby Heenan was actually allowed to be on commentary for this
yes,
first episode of
yes,
a wrestling
and
show.
I was gonna get to that when we went over the intro as well. Once again, here we are
Well,
covering Bobby fucking Heenan, because of course we are. Why wouldn't we be? Bobby Heenan, an
yeah.
absolute legend of the business, probably the best manager of all time. I know a lot of people are going to say Paul Heyman, but I think it's the two of them.
Oh,
And one of the
yeah.
better, and one of the, not even one of, the best heel commentator of all time. Am I wrong?
No, not wrong. No, definitely one of the best,
Yes.
if not the best.
Yeah, one of, if
Yeah.
not the. I would say the, but definitely one of the best. But yeah, it's kind of ironic. He's on the first episode of Raw and he's on the first episode of Nitro. So Bobby Heenan, in more ways than one, but in this way alone, has his claim to history. Kind of a cool little factoid there for everybody, I think.
Yeah.
And another thing that we'll get to in a minute, a cool little thing to point out, but I'll get to that when the time comes. But yeah, so it does a 2.5 in the ratings. This is the first ever episode of Raw. We are building towards Fall Brawl 1995, which would feature War Games, which was Team of Hogan, which was the team of Hulk Hogan, Sting, the Macho Man, Randy Savage, and Lex Luger, taking on the fucking Dungeon of Doom. Yeah, so that was a pretty forgettable War Games match, but we are building toward that pay-per-view. Here's another interesting little anecdote for you. Vader is in the opening video, what did you think of the opening video for Nitro, by the way? This is probably your first time seeing it. Where it's
man, yeah, it was pretty epic.
Yeah,
Got you excited.
Yeah, the industrial buildings and the pyro and everything.
Yeah.
I've always really liked it.
Yeah.
Here's a fun little factoid. I'm sure you noticed that Vader was one of the people that appeared on one of the buildings. Vader never appeared on an episode of Nitro.
Oh.
So,
wow.
Vader was actually fired right around this time after a backstage fight with Paul Orndorff that apparently Paul only had one working arm at the time, and apparently Paul got the better of it, even though Vader started it.
Oh, man.
So,
okay. Yeah, I didn't know about
that. Vader would never appear on WCW again. This is technically the last time we're ever going to see him on WCW television, unless you count the episode of Baywatch that would air next year, when he was already in fucking WWF.
Oh, my.
Which that's a whole nother thing we could cover on its own.
I think I've heard of it. Yeah, I think I've seen a little bits of it.
It was taped during Bash at the Beach 1995, but didn't air till 1996. But yeah, this is the last time we're ever going to see Vader on WCW television, is on the intro of the opening for Nitro. Kind of funny, is it not?
Yeah. So I wonder if they actually removed him from the intro at some point?
Yes, they did. They did.
Wow.
They replaced him with someone who's going to come out later in the night. Now, it has been reported over the years, which you have seen the show, so you know what gets announced for episode 2. But it's been reported over the years Vader was going to face Hulk Hogan in the main event of the second episode of Nitro for the WCW Championship and possibly even win it. Lex Luger was actually a late replacement on Team Hogan. Vader was originally going to be on Team Hogan to face the Dungeon of Doom.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, interesting times in WCW indeed. Obviously, Vader did not face Hulk Hogan on episode 2, but some fun little facts to get out of the way. So we kick off the show. We have our show intro, the amazing introduction, and then we are kicking things off with Eric Bischoff on commentary, introducing us to WCW Monday Nitro, live from the Mall of America in Minneapolis, Minnesota, alongside Steve Mongo McMichael.
Did you see how good he looked at that time? I mean, I know it was like 25 years ago.
Mongo looked incredible.
Wow.
Now, of course, back then, I don't think really many people outside of Chicago knew who the hell Steve McMichael was.
Yeah.
But if you listen to what Eric Bischoff says on his own podcast, he said that this is an NFL champion. This is a guy who brings a level of legitimacy, and that's what we were looking for. And apparently Ric Flair was a big proponent and big advocate for things like that. It's part of why Brian Pillman became a part of the Four Horsemen, is because he did have his football background, and Ric Flair, that really appealed to Ric Flair. So yeah, Steve Mongo McMichael on commentary with Pepe the dog. What'd you think of Mongo here, and what'd you think of Bischoff on commentary? This might be one of your first times hearing him, outside of when he was in the NWO.
Oh, yeah, no, it was really good. It's definitely better than having some jokester like Rob, what's his last name?
Rob Bartlett.
Bartlett or something? God.
Yeah,
so the commentary was definitely better on this.
Yeah, with Mongo McMichael, he's the jokester and he's got this personality, but he also likes wrestling, and you can tell.
Yeah, no, you definitely could tell.
Yep.
Yeah, he still was joking around and everything, but yeah, exactly. He was a fan.
Yeah, but they're interrupted by Bobby Heenan, who is appearing in the first episode of Nitro. He interrupts, and apparently Heenan had insulted Mongo the week before. Bischoff called him out for that, and Heenan, of course, kind of backtracks here. This is just kind of typical Bobby Heenan, but this was a fun little opening bit with the commentators here, right?
Yeah, the Weasel.
The Weasel himself.
He's backing off.
He's back.
Oh, I didn't say anything. Yeah.
Yeah, so fun little group here. All right, so we're kicking things off. We talked about having better wrestling. You mentioned that. So let's get into it here. Yeah. We kick things off with Jushin Liger from New Japan Pro Wrestling taking on Flying Brian Pillman. Drew, what do you think of this match?
Oh, what a way to open the show with those two guys of all people. I mean, wow. Yeah, it was really exciting. It was a good way to start the show.
Yeah, it didn't go on too long. You know, we've got some fast-paced action. Some of the bigger spots, you got, Liger does a senton to the outside. Of course, he does his signature surfboard stretch. Liger goes for a crossbody or a splash. Pillman catches him midair with a drop kick. Liger hits a hurricane run off the top rope. You got the tornado DDT in the corner. And then at the end, Liger hits a standing switch. Looks like he's going for the German suplex. And Pillman counters and rolls him through for a 3. Kind of a bit of a sloppy-looking pin, if we're being honest. But overall, the match was really good, so I can forgive it. Pillman wins in exactly 6 minutes here. So, Drew, how would you say that this match holds up by today's standards? We talked about that last time and how the show probably didn't really hold up by today's standards. How do you feel about this match?
Yeah, I think it holds up. And actually, that was another thing I was going to say about this show. It kind of felt like a modern show, didn't it?
A little bit.
It didn't feel like it was some old show.
And that's where it's so funny because people talk about how, Eric Bischoff's over-reliance on the older guys in the main event, which is not an unfair criticism, and we'll get to that later when we cover more shows. But Eric Bischoff and the direction he took WCW with the cruiserweights and everything like that, he kind of inspired what we see in today's wrestling, did he not?
Yeah, true. I think so.
Now, obviously, as a WCW fan, I might be a little biased here, but personally, that's just kind of my thoughts on the things. I feel like he really did, yeah.
Gave cruiserweights a chance.
Yeah. Jushin Liger and Brian Pillman are two guys that I feel like would have fit in today's era. Obviously, Liger, I believe Liger has since retired now. If not, he's probably still going just partially. But, Liger continued going for a long time after this. And, we did, unfortunately, Brian Pillman would pass away just a little over 2 years later. But, these are two guys that I think would have fit in today's era. Brian Pillman Jr. is doing pretty well for himself in AEW. But, yeah, I think if you watch this match, it's only goes 6 minutes, but it's a nice little look at what wrestling is going to become over the next 20 years.
Yeah, no, it really was. It was a really good opening match, and just a good match in general.
Exactly. I wholeheartedly agree. You won't get any arguments from me here. We got a quick pre-taped interview with Sting, setting up his United States title match with Ric Flair later on. Not a whole lot to work with here. It's just Sting, calling out Ric Flair. But, I mean, Sting looks young. He looks good, and he's fired up. He got you fired up for this match.
Oh, yeah. He's fired up. He kind of got you excited watching. I mean, wow. It was good.
So then we get to our first commercial break. And when we come back, we have another pre-taped interview. This time with our WCW champion, Hulk Hogan, at Pastamania inside Mall of America. He's promoting Pastamania and his match with Big Bubba in tonight's main event where he'll be defending the WCW title. Bischoff, of course, kind of struggles to talk to him because there's so many kids around and he can't really get up to Hogan.
Yeah.
This was some silly shit, was it not?
Yeah, no, it was. It was goofy. Hulk was, I don't know, did it kind of seem like in this episode Hulk was kind of heelish, maybe, a little bit?
He kind of, to me, when I go back and watch Hulk Hogan...
kind of vibes.
Even at his most babyface, Hulk Hogan has always come off like a heel to me.
I mean, that's true, like just in general throughout his career, but yeah.
But yeah, so
I think when he got to WCW, he was very kind of heelish.
Yeah,
he's probably ready for that heel turn.
Yeah, he was really trying to change up his image. He knew the red and yellow just wasn't working anymore, brother. Yeah. And he was kind of hesitant to turn heel because of the charity and everything he did with kids. But you could tell he was ready to change things up. But here he's talking about his Hulkaroos, and he says Big Bubba needs to trim his waistline because he's been trimming up and leaning out with his Pasta Mania. And tonight he and the Hulkamaniacs and the Pasta Maniacs are going to run wild on Big Bubba. Drew, did this get you excited for the main event?
No, it didn't. I'm pretty sure that pasta makes people fat. So, but yeah.
Well, no, brother. Not if you're eating it in the right portions. Apparently, you just got to. I
don't know. It's heavy on the stomach. I don't know.
I don't know. It sounded like he was even talking about having some kind of like SpaghettiO type item on the menu. I don't feel like Hulk Hogan was eating Pasta Mania. What do you think, brother?
Probably not. No. Brother. Oh.
So next up, we see Ric Flair coming out for the United States Championship match with Sting. I'm not sure if you noticed or not, but Mongo makes a comment about if you're not excited for this, you might as well just go watch that other. He's about to reference WWF, and Bischoff tells him.
Oh, Mongo.
Bischoff says, "Don't say it."
Cut it out.
And Heenan says.
He actually said that, didn't he?
And then Bobby Heenan says, "The Weather Channel."
Oh, yeah.
So here's
same thing, I guess,
yeah,
right?
Pretty much. So here's a fun fact for this episode. So Nitro does a 2.5 in the ratings, and Raw does a 0.0. It's a clean sweep for Nitro this week because Raw's not on the fucking air.
Yeah. I was actually going to say, I don't think they were on the air at that time.
No, and do you want to know why they weren't on the air?
Was it the dog show?
Yeah,
or
we
something?
had to get the Westminster Dog Show in. Holy shit! You know, this is gonna sound like us really gobbling on Eric Bischoff a little bit, but we'll pine on him at some point in the future. Don't get me wrong, because
he's my guy.
I love Eric Bischoff,
sure.
but there's a lot to shit on with Eric Bischoff. I'm sure you'll agree. But when it comes to the first episode of Nitro, it's really hard to dog him. There's really only praise they've been giving out. Genius move by Eric Bischoff premiering, and by Ted Turner and TNT, premiering Nitro when Raw's not on the air.
Yeah, that was a perfect opportunity to do it. Yeah, exactly.
You want to talk about an amazing business move. You guarantee you have no competition. You can draw a decent rating because wrestling fans are going to want to watch wrestling on Monday. And hey, it's first ever episode of Nitro. Let's check it out. Raw's not on.
Well, and the fact, like I was saying, the bright lights, you're in a mall. Oh, it's great scenery. It's good stuff.
Absolutely amazing scenery. So after Bobby Heenan says the Weather Channel, we get Sting's iconic Man Called Sting theme. Pretty good reaction for Sting here inside the Mall of America.
Yeah. Oh, as it should be, yeah.
Yep, Sting was over like hell back in the 90s.
Man, they call Sting.
Yeah, even back in 95, Sting over as hell. As Sting's entrance is finishing up, out comes Lex Luger, who was just signed to the WWF the night before, but his contract has expired, unbeknownst to the WWF, so he's free reign here. Crowd has a very loud Luger chant. Bischoff telling security, get him out of here and get the camera off him. Heenan says he's doing nothing wrong.
Yeah, you love how Bischoff... Yeah, exactly. Bischoff just freaks out right away. Oh, get him out of here! Get the camera off him! What did Luger do to you?
But you know
He's
what?
just watching.
But you know what? Bischoff, to me, does a solid job selling the fact that, hey, wait a second. This guy's from the other... This is from the other promotion. What is he doing here? Don't show him. He does a great job.
Yeah.
This is an iconic moment in the history of professional wrestling, and for very good reason. It was the first time we'd see somebody jump ship during the Monday Night Wars. It's in a pretty big way. The WWF had no damn clue.
And it was just so casual. He just walks out, sits there, looks around, and then that's it. That's it.
And what did you make of the crowd chanting Luger here? They were pretty loud.
Yeah. I think he was hoping to have that in the WWF, but hey, oh well.
Which that was
get that in WCW though.
That was the ironic point I was going to bring up. We saw Bobby Heenan on the first episode of Raw. We see him here on Nitro. On the first episode of Raw, Bobby Heenan is promoting Narcissus Lex Luger.
Yeah.
So while he was not on the first episode of Raw, he was being promoted. And here he is on the first Nitro.
And then, that's crazy how that worked out. Wow.
Yeah, and then you've got, again, Bobby Heenan. He's doing nothing wrong, so it's kind of funny how Bobby Heenan's almost seemingly advocating for him here again.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Looking back on this moment, do you think it lived up to the hype of how huge people have made it out to be over the years? This is your first time watching.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, especially if you were watching at that time and you just see him pop up on TV. You would never expect that.
Yeah, no, people freaked out back then. And understandably so. It's still an iconic moment. It's a moment that will live on forever, and so is Luger, despite, a lot of the negative press he's gotten over the years. Just hearing this chant here and thinking about how big of a moment he has here. Say what you want about Lex Luger's in-ring work, but I think he will always be one of the biggest names in the wrestling history.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He has his place in history. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's get to the action. Flair and Sting here. It's your pretty usual Flair-Sting matchup. They had great chemistry. They usually did a variance of the exact same match. We've got Sting doing a lot of press slams and hip tosses. Does a drop kick.
Flair getting thrown around.
Yeah, Flair's bumping his ass off. He fires off some chops in the corner. We got the Sting no-sell. Flair counters an Irish whip at one point of the rope. Sting stops. And Flair does a fucking cross body and sends them both over the top rope. That kind of caught me off guard.
Yeah. Very unexpected.
Very unexpected.
Oh, my.
We got Sting gorilla presses him back into the ring. Shortly after this, we go to commercial. We come back from commercial break, and of course, as soon as we come back, Flair's on the top turnbuckle, and Sting comes over and press slams him off the top turnbuckle. Drew.
Usual stuff, yeah.
Drew, why the hell did Ric Flair ever go to the top rope?
We've all been trying to figure that out since the dawn of wrestling time, I guess.
Every time.
I don't know.
Every time that Ric Flair gets off to the top rope, he gets tossed off. It's like, here are the biggest questions in wrestling history. Who drove the white Hummer that hit Kevin Nash on that episode? Who the fuck blew up Vince McMahon? Who made the stage collapse on Vince McMahon? Who threw the pie at Kevin Owens? And why does Ric Flair keep going to the fucking top rope? I feel like those are the 5 main questions in the history of the wrestling business.
It's very true. Didn't one time he went up top and it actually worked out like once?
Yes.
Just for shits and giggles or something?
And if you want to call it working out, he goes for like a crossbody or a frog splash and lands on his fucking feet first. So the one time it did work out, it looked like hell.
Oh, well. That should have told him he needs to just cut it out.
And I think that's why he started just exclusively being tossed from the top turnbuckle and never doing anything else.
Yeah.
This is a great showing between these two. It's not their best match they've ever had together by any means. But, Sting, a powerhouse, Flair's bumping his ass off. Sting does his vintage 10-count punches on the top turnbuckle. Flair avoids a Stinger splash, but then Arn Anderson comes out. And commentators are speculating who he's out there for. Heenan says he and Flair patch things up. We're building towards their match at Fall Brawl. The 4 Horsemen is split up at this point. We're building into their little mini feud that would, of course, end at Halloween Havoc 95 when Flair would turn on Sting and reform the 4 Horsemen with Arn Anderson. It was all a ruse to get back at Sting because, of course, it was. Everybody betrays Sting, and he always seems to fall for it.
Yeah.
But, here, Ric Flair gets the figure 4 on Sting, and he refuses to let go of the ropes even though the referee's counting, and we got a DQ finish here. What did you think of the match overall, and did you like the DQ finish, or what did you think of it overall?
Yeah, it was fine. Yeah, it was fine. It was all good. I guess tell a little story, and that's okay to do that, obviously. The funny thing is we could have almost seen Sting and Flair in the same company, which would be AEW,
Yeah.
but didn't work out.
And that was another thing I
Shame.
was going to bring up is here we are,
Oh,
Drew.
well,
So just think about this. September 4th, 1995. We're watching
yeah.
Sting wrestle Ric Flair on Nitro. Here we are 25 and a half years later, and just last night on AEW Dynamite, Sting's out there with Darby Allin. He's still wrestling every now and then, still looks good when he's wrestling. 25 and a half years later.
Yeah.
And even better,
And
on TNT.
How old is he? 62, 63?
Yeah, he's got to be 62.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was,
Yeah.
He's pushing 40 in the 90s. It started in the 80s. So he's already about 10 plus years into his career at this point.
Oh, man. Yeah, that is true. That's just crazy.
Yeah, and like I said,
him and Undertaker, longevity.
Fair, yeah, you want to talk about longevity? Yeah, it's those two. But yeah, 25 and a half years later, and like I
Ric
said,
Flair too.
Yeah, Ric Flair. Oh, even more so. But 25 and a half years later, still on TNT. I think this match holds up. These two always have a good match. This is not one of their best matches. Maybe not even one of their better ones. But it still holds up very well, I think, personally. Do you think it holds up for today?
Yeah, I think it holds up. I mean, really, I don't know. Wasn't much of a match. I think it was more about storytelling, really, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
They would have other better matches. So.
Of course. And more than anything, this wasn't even about, hey, guys, go out there and have the best match. This was go out there, do what you guys do a compressed version of what you guys have always done to build up the WCW crowd and show people what WCW and what Sting and what Ric Flair are about.
Yeah, that's what it was, yeah.
Because, this is, for a lot of people, this was their first time being introduced to these guys.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah. Man.
But, of course, like we said, great storytelling here. But then Arn Anderson comes in and pulls Flair off of Sting and just immediately starts pummeling the hell out of him, chases him to the outside, and Flair runs off. Arn Anderson, another guy, still in AEW, not wrestling, but we still see him a lot. I wonder if we're going to be seeing him going forward with the news of Cody Rhodes.
Whew. Yeah.
Probably see him with Brock Anderson.
Yeah, I think he'll just manage his son, which is pretty cool. He'll be fine.
Cool. And
yeah.
Of course, we all know Arn is the reason that Brock is destined to look like he's 40 years old forever. But
oh God. Yeah.
That's the thing here.
Scary.
Arn was probably about 40 here, if not a little bit older. But if we went back and watched 10 years before this, he would look about the exact same age.
Yeah. He doesn't change.
No, he really, even now, he's just a little bit heavier and got a little bit more gray. Looks exactly the same.
Yeah. That's incredible. Wow.
So, obviously, this was your first time watching. Drew, how weird was it for you to watch Arn Anderson and Ric Flair going at it?
Oh, man. Well, I don't know. They kind of always, on and off, went against each other, didn't they?
No, believe it or not, this program with Fall Brawl was the only time the two ever really wrestled and ever feuded.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is kind of surprising to see that.
And we might need to cover Fall Brawl soon enough, because I'll tell you what, Drew. For the people don't know, I'm doing a WCW watch along. I started with, or watch through, I should say. I started with the first episode of Nitro. I'm watching everything in order from Nitro pay-per-views. Then I'll work my way to Thunder, and I'll do Nitro Thunder pay-per-views until the very end. Fall Brawl 95, Ric Flair, Arn Anderson. It's a phenomenal match. I'm assuming you probably haven't seen it, but
no.
It is a match I think you need to see. It is a phenomenal match, and we are building towards that here, as you heard. I mean, obviously, Ric Flair, Arn Anderson wrestling, that gets you excited as a wrestling fan, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So before we go to commercial break, Scott Flash Norton comes out and confronts Eric Bischoff, comes towards Bobby Heenan. Bobby Heenan, of course, immediately weasels out and said, "I'm not the guy you want. He's the one in charge. Talk to him." So before we get to what happens here, in WWF they would never refer to Vince as the boss. How interesting is it that our first night on Nitro, and we've immediately got Heenan referring to him as the guy in charge?
Yeah, that was a little surprising. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah,
away.
Yeah, Eric Bischoff right away was fine with doing that. He, kind of went away from the norm. Of course, the first actual real on-air authority figure that was actually an authority figure in real life to put himself as an on-air authority figure while being a commentator was actually Herb Abrams in the UWF. We might cover that at some point, but that is a whole nother thing. But just a little anecdote here. So as Scott Norton confronts him, Macho Man shows up and says, "Flash Norton, I was wondering when I was going to see you in WCW." And they got a little confrontation going on. Norton asks, "What are they waiting for?" And Randy says, "We don't have to wait for nothing," and climbs in the ring. Bischoff is freaking out here. Tells Norton if he steps into that ring right now, he'll never compete in WCW. Of course, during the main event, we get the announcement that these two are going to face each other next week. Did you like this segment between these two? Have you ever really watched Scott Norton before? What'd you think?
Yeah, I never really knew the guy until I saw that. The Beyond the Ring or
Dark Side of the Ring?
No, Dark Side of the Ring, the Japan thing.
Oh, the Tokyo
or the Korea thing. I'm all over.
Yeah, I still have not watched that. I've listened to the podcast about it. I've not watched that. But yeah, his trip there was a wild thing, was it not? Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah. No, this is really bad.
Yeah.
It was bad for all of them. Flair was there, too.
Yep.
But no, I never really knew him. I guess apparently he only had one appearance in WWE, and it was at some house show in like October '94 or something.
That doesn't surprise me.
And that was it.
Scott
that
Norton,
was it.
Yeah, no, that's it. Scott Norton, of course, was a big guy in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Real intense look about him. You could tell he was a power lifter. He had that typical barrel look that they have where he's got a bit of a belly on him, but you can tell by looking at him, the guy's solid muscle. He's got a great look.
Oh, yeah. He's
got a great look. He's an absolute powerhouse. And, of course, Randy Savage here is Randy Savage. He's an absolute basket case, and we love him. Yeah. This is a fun little thing.
And he's no slouch himself, yeah.
No, and it's a fun little thing, and it sets up their match next week. Bischoff's trying to get security to resolve the chaos, and then he says, let's take a look at somebody coming to WCW. Here's Sabu. Man. Sabu in WCW. He does not fit this time of WCW, does he?
Yeah, I thought that right away. I didn't even know he was there.
Yeah, he very briefly. Very briefly, he would win a few matches, but there is even one match where he wins, but continues beating up Mr. JL after the match, which is Jerry Lynn, and gets disqualified. And I believe that actually happened to him more than once. So he's got that going for him. So we get a nice little hype package for Sabu, and the ECW crowd goes wild, but the rest of the crowd goes mild. Of course, I'm saying this. I have a picture of myself with Sabu back in 2015. It was a cool moment. He's a very weird guy, I'll be honest. I'm sure that doesn't surprise anybody.
No.
But, so we go to commercial break. We come back from commercial break, and Gene Okerlund's in the ring. Drew, before we get to what he talks about, because it's very brief, is there a better voice in the history of professional wrestling than Gene Okerlund?
Not really, unless you were to count JR in that, but no.
It's got to be those two. I mean, Mean Gene Okerlund's got to be like one of the best announcers and interviewers ever. He has...
Oh, he's perfect.
When I think of radio voice, I think of Gene Okerlund. He had the perfect radio voice.
Oh yeah. Very.
And there's
fantastic.
so many fun Gene Okerlund stories out there, and it was. I remember I was at work when the news broke a few years ago about Gene Okerlund passing away, and it was a very sad day. Gene Okerlund was a big part of my childhood. watching WCW. I think anybody that watched WCW loved Gene Okerlund. One of the most charismatic characters ever to be in pro wrestling, right?
Yes, very much so.
And speaking of charisma and the goofiness of Gene Okerlund, we get to the ring and he welcomes everybody and says, "To think I could have bought 10 acres of land here for 17 grand in 1953. Of course, I was only 18 years old. Of course, I was only 8 years old at the time, so who knows?" What the fuck?
Yeah.
It's just a fun...
I guess that's when the mall was created. Yeah, it's bizarre.
I'm assuming so. It's still a fun little joke by Gene Okerlund. But he's really out there to announce the winner of the Harley-Davidson giveaway, which is Mike Hill.
Yeah.
If memory serves me correct,
congratulations.
we would see Mike Hill either at Fall Brawl or Halloween Havoc. We would see him in a backstage interview with Hulk Hogan where he didn't seem like he really gave that much of a shit about Hulk Hogan, if I'm being honest, watching it when I watched it back. But, I mean, if he's a WCW fan, he might not have been.
He just wanted the Harley-Davidson.
Yeah. Yeah, so then we have a quick rundown of what's to come on WCW Saturday night. We've got Johnny B. Bad, the future Mark Marrow, taking on one half of the WCW World Tag Team Champions, Dirty Dick Slater. Never good to have a dirty dick on your hands. We've got Sting and the Macho Man Randy Savage teaming up to take on the Blue Bloods, and I can't remember what the other match was, if I'm being 100% honest. I didn't mark it down in my notes. But then Eric Bischoff says,
okay.
Let's take a look at someone else coming to WCW. And it's Michael Wall Street, who will become VK Wall Street, a play on Vincent Kennedy McMahon. The former IRS. Oh, God.
That was great. Well, he even made reference to the IRS. Oh, maybe the IRS.
Yep.
Or
He
whatever.
says, I know the IRS will be looking into me. He also makes reference to the WWF, the new generation. I don't know if you caught that or not.
Yeah.
But he calls it
too,
the few generation. I'll be honest. I hated this promo. I thought it was ridiculous. It was just it just reeked of 90s cheesiness. And Michael Wall Street was just a character I could never have gotten into, to be honest. IRS was one thing, but this just felt like them doing a cheap knockoff of it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's generic copy of it. Oh, yeah. And because they can't call him IRS, they call him Wall Street.
Yep, but they can
Michael Wall Street.
But they're allowed to say the IRS
and
is
wait
looking
a minute.
into him.
Wait a minute. And did they call him Michael Wall Street because of Michael Douglas?
Oh,
who
God.
was the actor?
You know what? They might have.
In Wall Street?
They might have.
Oh, I'm pissed.
Oh,
I just made
God.
the connection.
I didn't make that connection until you said it either. Oh, my God.
It just came now. It wasn't even when I was watching it. It just came now.
Oh, fuck. I don't have a good way to pull up the Google machine to see when that movie came out, but you're probably right. Oh, my God.
It was like 87,
Oh, then,
88.
yeah, definitely it was. Definitely it was.
For sure.
So, yeah, like I said.
This is 95.
Pretty.
Probably.
Yeah. Yep, this is 95. So, yeah, pretty silly promo here. Not a character that's ever going to get over, but it is kind of funny to think this man is the father of Bo Dallas and Bray Wyatt, who have both had some pretty good characters in their own right.
Yeah, and those characters went nowhere, apparently, for some reason.
You're not wrong.
That's not their fault.
No, not at all. Bo Dallas, a former NXT champion, had a pretty good run with it. And he is a former Raw Tag Team champion, correct? He and Curtis Axel did hold it for a time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
for a little bit.
I think it was when they were the Misfits, right? Or the Entourage, or whatever the hell they call it. The Miz-tourage.
Oh, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you have, of course, Bray Wyatt.
Well, so...
go ahead.
So of the three, Bray Wyatt, Bo Dallas, and the IRS, what do you think is the best gimmick, best character?
Oh, The Fiend, bar none.
Yeah.
I think The Fiend had the most... I think The Fiend had horror movie crossover potential. I think WWE had a gold mine on their hands that they really fucked up.
Oh, yeah. Completely agree.
Like
depressing.
It very, very much so is. There's no other way to put it. Yeah, no, absolutely Bray Wyatt. I think if anybody says anything differently, they should be shot. But
whoa,
no, so, I jest. I'm kidding. I'm only jesting. Obviously, everybody is welcome to their own opinion, but I think you'd be hard pressed to find somebody who wouldn't say Bray Wyatt in some iteration, right?
Oh yeah, he's just very creative mind.
Absolutely. Of course, Bray Wyatt, the most successful of the three members of the family, former Universal Champion and a former WWE Champion. But yeah, so we get that promo out of the way, and Big Bubba comes out for the main event. We head to commercial break, and after we come back, we immediately hear the familiar tune of American Made as Hulk Hogan makes his way out for the first ever Nitro main event to defend the WCW Championship. There's lots of old school shtick in this match. Big Bubba gets a headlock pretty early on in the match. And was that or was that not the goofiest crankdown on a headlock you've ever seen in your life, where he's just bouncing up and down and his arms are just coming completely free of Hogan's head?
Yeah, I would say so. It's okay. We love him.
Oh, yeah, no, of course, Big Bubba Rogers, the big boss man, is no longer with us. One of the better characters and one of the better big men of all time, of course. This isn't meant to be a 5-star Dave Meltzer match here in your main event. It's a typical Hulk Hogan match, right?
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm of the opinion.
Oh, it was.
I am of the opinion that there is nothing wrong with that.
No. Yeah, people always make a big deal about things like that. It's like, no.
And you know
Let him do his little thing.
I'm probably
he's going to win at the end of the day, so be it.
And I'm probably going to trigger a lot of people when I say this. Probably going to trigger a lot of the fans. But, hey, if anything, this gives you all a chance. Tune in every week to the podcast to hear me make more hot takes like this that you can get pissed off about.
There you go.
I enjoyed this in the Hulk Hogan shtick more than I do a lot of the flippy bullshit matches we see nowadays.
Whoa!
Give me...
How dare you?
Give me a match that tells a good story and only has a few big moves in it over 50 false finishes any day of the week.
What? You mean you don't like that stuff? You don't like the 5,000 super kicks and the match going on for 45 minutes?
No, believe it or not, I don't. And we can get into this hot take on a later date about certain matches from AEW that people have clamored over that I personally think went on about 15 minutes too long. One that you and I watched together. But we'll save that for another time. And I think you know exactly which one I'm talking about. But here, we get some heavy punches from Big Bubba. He does backbreaker, running splash in the corner. Hogan eventually catches him with a big boot in the corner as Bubba runs at him. Bubba stumbles, tries it again, and is met with another boot and is just kind of wobbling. Hogan goes to punch him, stops, looks at the crowd, and then just pushes him, and Bubba just falls flat back. And somewhere in Connecticut, in some house, some nice little mansion in Connecticut, at that exact moment, a seed was planted in Kevin Nash's mind for what he was going to be doing in 4 years' time. The finger poke of doom.
Oh, no. Oh, my. Yeah.
The light bulb struck in Hulk Hogan's match in Hulk Hogan's head. Brother, one day that's how I'm going to win the title, brother.
Yeah. Just that simple.
That was some that was some of the goofiest shit I've ever seen in wrestling, but in a good way, right? Like, that was funny, but good.
Man.
Just pushing him over.
It's not enough that I beat everybody, brother, but I'm also going to just push him down and take the title.
And of course, we get some top rope punches from Hogan, similar to what Sting does, and Hogan's pretty fired up at this point. He's really got some fire in him. Looks like he's, I don't know, he looks like he's getting heated up.
Woo!
Interesting stuff, Hogan. Bubba takes over, and Heenan makes the remark of, let him know who's boss.
Oh, my.
I felt like that was a subtle nod. Of course, Big Boss Man. But at one point, Big Bubba, when he came back to WCW, was known as the Boss. But there was a cease and desist from the WWF due to copyright, so they changed it to the Guardian Angel. After returning to the WCW, Big Bubba Rogers, as he was originally called, Big Bubba, underwent quite a few name and gimmick changes because they just couldn't get something to work after Big Boss Man. But just a fun little thing there. Big Bubba hits a big body slam, ends up going for a running splash in the corner. Hogan avoids it, throws some punches. He goes for the clothesline, gets caught with a huge side slam, kick out, and then Hogan starts hulking up, fires his punches, big boot, leg drop, and a 1-2-3 for Hogan to retain the WCW Championship. Drew, did you like the match? What'd you think?
You see, you wonder if he would he actually be allowed to do all that, the hulking up and all the mannerisms and stuff? Or maybe he just owned it. I don't know.
I believe he owned it. I believe he owned the trademarks for Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, because he owned the name too, I guess. But
yep.
Wow.
Yeah,
but it was a good match.
Yeah. I think this entire card holds up, even the Hulk Hogan match. I think Hulk Hogan was still capable of producing a good match at the time. Of course, give it another 2-3 years, and that is no longer the case here in WCW, and we will cover that at a later time. But then,
he probably should have shaved his head, because that was kind of nasty.
Yep. Yeah, we've got Hulk Hogan with his signature hot dog skin here as well. Hulk Hogan, another thing to bring up, he's in really good shape here in 1995. Very lean.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, this is some of the better shape he was in his career. Of course, his body was pretty beat up at the time. But after the match, Kevin Sullivan, leading the Dungeon of Doom, comes out with fucking Zodiac. Kamala and Ming as well. They run out to beat down Hogan. Kamala was originally part of the Dungeon of Doom team that was going to partake, but apparently he had an issue with the idea of doing the job for Macho Man or someone. He had an issue doing a job for somebody, and so he's out of the company before Fall Brawl, and he would be replaced by the Shark, formerly known as Earthquake, John Tenta. Even here in 1995, with all due respect to Kamala, I feel like John Tenta's an upgrade as far as in-ring work goes, right?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
Yeah, so of course they come out to beat down Hogan, but then out of nowhere, out comes Lex Luger to make the save. And they claim house. They bump into each other, and they nearly come to blows. Hogan, with some great selling and acting here, and looks at the ref and says, "What's he doing here?" Looks absolutely stunned. Macho Man and Sting come out to separate them. Hogan tells Luger right before the break, as Mean Gene's coming back to the ring, he tells Luger, "Go back to where you came from."
Coming from the guy who was the face of the WWF.
Which was going to be my point. That's a little ironic, coming from the guy who was the face of WWF, and Luger was a WCW guy first, before he went to WWF.
Yeah. That's true.
So, kind of funny to hear him say that.
Man.
So, of course, we come back from break, and they have an interview, and these two are going back and forth. Hogan asks him, "What are you doing here, dude?" And Luger says, "I'm going to be honest with you right out of the gate. I'm here for that WCW championship." And they go back and forth, and Hogan tells him to stick out his stinky palm and shake his hand. Hulk Hogan had a thing with calling things stinky back then. He called the Giant, Paul White, the future Big Show, that no good stinky giant on more than one occasion. They would shake hands and set up the WCW title match for next week on Nitro. So Vader's out and Luger's in. I personally liked this. We end up going off the air. They have a shoving match, and the commentary team kind of goes over what's happened tonight and sets up next week. I really liked this post-match stuff with Luger and Hogan here. This was some great storytelling and some great acting and selling by these guys. What did you think of it overall, this segment?
Well, it got people excited. and then you give them a title match for the next week.
Yeah, great.
I mean, how much better can it get?
And that is what wrestling, I feel like, is missing nowadays. I feel like you've got to... One thing WCW did very well is they always ended on a cliffhanger or ended setting up the next episode.
Yeah, true. True that.
And I feel like it works best when you do that because you're giving people a reason to tune in next week. And I really do think that both the WWE and AEW could learn from this nowadays. Do something that's going to get people to come back next week.
Yeah.
And another thing that I think...
And it might work.
Yeah. Of course, AEW nowadays is good about starting things off with a match. Occasionally they start things off with a promo, but WWE has become very formulaic. You're going to kick off every show with a 10-plus minute promo. Maybe sometimes it's a little shorter. WCW here, though, they do their intro, they have the commentators introduce you to the show, and then we're right to the action. That's the right way to produce a wrestling show, right?
Yeah, something to be said about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
very nice.
So yeah, we've officially covered the entire show. That was the first ever episode of Nitro. This was we talked about historic as far as Raw goes, but this is historic in its own right. This kicked off the Monday Night Wars. Really, this was the first shot in the war for the Monday Night Wars, which I'm sure we'll be talking a lot about while wrestling the past. Because it's hard not to talk about the Monday Night Wars if you're going to be doing a show about the past of wrestling. Drew, last week I asked you to rate Monday Night Raw, and you gave it a 6.5 or 7 out of 10.
Easy.
I ended up talking about it, and you dropped it down to a 4. What would you give this episode of Nitro? Scale of 1 to 10.
Maybe 8.5.
8.5 out of 10. Nice. So I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. So we are actually on the same track of mind here. So that's good to see after last week when I was so flabbergasted that I almost didn't want to speak to you. Fucking 6.5 or 7 out of 10 for that first episode of Raw. After we got done talking about how shitty it was, you gave it a 6.5 or 7 out of 10. What the hell, man?
I'm a WWF guy. I can't help it.
Oh, man.
But yeah, I should have been unbiased.
But obviously, it sounds like we are both in agreement here. This is a very good show. 8 to 8.5 out of 10. Pretty good scores. And a fantastic show to cover for wrestling the past. I really enjoyed going back and watching this one. Like I said, this is probably about my 6th time watching it. It's first time for you. So this is your first time ever seeing it. Yeah. Sounds like you really dug it. So that's awesome. I'm happy to hear that, man. As a WCW guy, I love hear that. Yeah. I'm glad you could dig it, sucker. Yeah. But yeah, so this was a fun episode to cover, I think. Drew, do you have any other things you want to say about this episode before we wrap things up today?
Just really good episode and really helped make the Monday Night Wars, and it definitely holds up today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And Eric Bischoff rules.
That's right. Eric Bischoff rules. We stand Eric Bischoff here on this channel. At least on this podcast, Drew and
if anything you take from tonight's show, take that.
Yeah.
Bischoff's the best.
So, I love this show. I think this is a great show for us to cover. I think it holds up very well. If you've never seen it before, please go back and watch it on the network, on Peacock. Yeah, I don't have much else to say. This is a fantastic episode. So, thank you all for tuning in. Tune in later this week. We'll have a special Wrestling the Past episode where I'll be interviewing independent wrestling star. I'm trying to think of the right way to put it, but independent wrestler, I guess that'd be the better way to put it. Independent wrestler from Indiana, Jared Kripke. I'll be doing a special interview with him on the channel. I'll be uploading that later this week. That'll be both on the YouTube channel and in audio form on the podcast. So whatever you're watching us on, whether you're watching us on video form on YouTube or if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify right now, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to follow us. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave us a rating and a review. Get the word out. Spread the word to your friends. We've got more episodes coming soon. And next week, Drew, we're going to be covering WrestleMania 1. Are you excited for this?
Oh, man. Yeah, March already. Jeez. Yeah.
Yeah, we're already...
I look forward to it.
It's going to be a fun episode to get into. WrestleMania 1, there's going to be a lot to talk about. You want to talk about historical significance. There's a lot of historical significance. And we're going to be talking about that a lot throughout the entire month of March as we build WrestleMania month on the way to WrestleMania 38 in Dallas. So yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I am Kyle McGee. He is Drew Blazer, and we are out of time. We will see you next week on Wrestling the Past. Take care.